Bucknutters, and welcome into the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2015. I am Dave Biddle. Ohio State released its depth chart yesterday. Let's go position by position. Let's look at it, see if there's anything that stands out. Starting at the quarterback position, no surprise here. JT Barrett and Cardale Jones are bracketed as starters. The word "or" appears a lot on the depth chart, so get used to that. So Cardale Jones and JT Barrett as expected. Urban Meyer not tipping his hand. I continue to think JT Barrett's going to start. Cardale Jones will play. It sounds like a two-quarterback system is in the cards. At running back, obviously Ezekiel Elliott is the starter. Briante Dunn is the backup. Warren Ball is listed as the third-teamer. No surprises there. I do think that Curtis Samuel would be the go-to running back if something happened to Ezekiel Elliott, but as expected, Briante Dunn is listed as the backup running back. At the H-back position, Braxton Miller and Curtis Samuel are bracketed as the starters. I thought it might be Braxton Miller as the starter, Curtis Samuel as the backup, but those guys are bracketed as the starters. Curtis Samuel is going to play a lot. Again, I think he'll float back and forth between running back and the H-back position. Braxton Miller is going to be out there a lot. Very exciting stuff. Here's the surprise. KJ Hill listed as an H-back. I thought he was a wide receiver all the way, but they have KJ Hill listed as the backup to Braxton Miller and Curtis Samuel at the H-back position. So that's very interesting. And at wide receiver, with Noah Brown out, they have three guys bracketed as the starter. They're James Clark, Johnny Dixon, and Terry McLaurin in alphabetical order. I tend to think Terry McLaurin's going to play the most in the first game just because Johnny Dixon is still having some issues with the knees. So I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin's the guy that's going to play most out of that trio. But it's interesting that they did not separate anybody there. They went with three guys bracketed as the starter at that wide receiver position with Noah Brown injured and out for the season. And obviously with Jalen Marshall and Corey Smith and those guys coming back the following week, those guys will be in there. At the other wide receiver spot, of course, Michael Thomas is the starter. He is the best wide receiver on this team, one of the best in the nation. I think he's going to challenge for single-season receiving records at Ohio State. He is that good. He's going to be the go-to receiver all year. So no surprise there, of course. Backing him up, a bit of a surprise. Paris Campbell and Jeff Green are bracketed as the backups. The surprise being I thought Paris Campbell was an H-back. Just like I thought KJ Hill was a wide receiver, those guys have kind of flipped duties. Now, I'm sure they're going to move around a lot. Paris Campbell will still play some H-back. KJ Hill will still play some wide receiver. But it's interesting on the depth chart that Paris Campbell's listed as a wide receiver and KJ Hill's listed as an H-back. And then Jeff Green is listed along with Paris Campbell at the wide receiver position behind Michael Thomas. You have Paris Campbell and Jeff Green bracketed behind Michael Thomas, Jeff Green being the fifth-year senior walk-on, former transfer from Georgia Tech. So maybe Jeff Green's going to get a chance to play in this first game. Tight end, absolutely no surprise. Nick Van Nett, starter, one of the best tight ends in the country. That's a given. Marcus Baugh's the backup. We knew that as well. My big question is who's going to be the third-team tight end? Is it going to be A.J. Alexander or Rashad Berry? I think it's going to be Alexander, and Berry will redshirt, but we'll see what happens there. On the offensive line, no surprises at all. You knew the first-team offensive line was set from left to right. Taylor Decker, Billy Price, Jacoby Bourne, Pat Elflein, and Chase Ferris. You knew that. Everybody knew that. You even knew the backup offensive line. We've been telling you throughout camp the backup offensive line from left to right is Jamarco Jones, Demetrius Knox, Brady Taylor, Evan Lyle, and Isaiah Prince. Isaiah Prince being the standout of the five true freshman offensive linemen. They like all five, but Isaiah Prince, they really like him. I also find it interesting that Brady Taylor is playing center. Nothing new. Again, he's been doing it since the beginning of camp. But I like that move. He's a guy that I think a lot of people, myself included, thought would be a tackle. He's a pretty big guy for a center. He's listed at 6'5". He's pushing 6'6", 300 pounds. But that'll be interesting to see if Brady Taylor can get the job done there behind Jacoby Bourne. But to be clear, if anything happens to Jacoby Bourne, Pat Elflein would slide to center, and they would bring in likely Evan Lyle into the game at guard, or Demetrius Knox, whoever ends up being the top backup guard. All right, let's switch to defense. With Joey Bosa out, Sam Hubbard and Jalen Holmes are bracketed as the starters at defensive end. Although Urban Meyer did say last week he thought Hubbard was a little bit ahead of Holmes, so I look for Hubbard to start, but both those guys will play a lot. At the other defensive end spot, as expected, Tyquan Lewis is the starter. Darius Slade is the backup. At defensive tackle, no surprises with the starters, or really the backups. Adolphus Washington and Tommy Shutt are the starters. Backing up Adolphus Washington, the Buckeyes have Donovan Munger and Tracy Sprinkle bracketed together. I think Munger and Sprinkle are both going to play a lot. They're going to use a deep rotation up front. Same deal for the guys backing up Tommy Shutt. Joel Hale and Michael Hill are bracketed together. So I think all those guys, Larry Johnson's going to use a deep rotation up front. All those guys are going to play. I tend to think Donovan Munger is going to get the most playing time of any of the backup defensive tackles. Keep in mind, he was the only backup defensive tackle that played for the Buckeyes against Alabama in the Sugar Bowl last year. So I think Munger's going to be out there a lot. No surprises there on the defensive line. No surprises at linebacker either. The starters were etched in stone entering camp with Darren Lee, Raekwon McMillan, and Josh Perry. And the backup spots, at least on the outside, were pretty much set as well, with Chris Worley backing up Darren Lee and Dante Booker backing up Josh Perry. In the middle, I wondered if one of the true freshmen could beat out Cam Williams for the backup spot behind Raekwon McMillan, but they couldn't. Cam Williams is the backup behind Raekwon McMillan. That means all three of the highly rated true freshman linebackers will begin the season as third-team linebackers: Jerome Baker, Justin Hilliard, and Nick Connor. Now, they'll be all over special teams. I don't think any of those guys are going to redshirt, but it shows you how much depth this team has at linebacker, and those three guys can't even crack the two deep. At corner, as expected, Eli Apple and Garyon Conley are the starters. Damon Webb is the backup for Garyon Conley. And then backing up Eli Apple, this is where it gets interesting. They have Marshawn Lattimore or Denzel Ward. So you have Lattimore and Ward backing up Eli Apple. I think Lattimore is not going to play in the opener. I hope he does. He has the chronic hamstring injuries. It reminds me a lot of what's going on with Johnny Dixon. Although it does seem like Johnny Dixon's knees are a little healthier than Marshawn Lattimore's hamstrings. But just like it seems like Dixon can't really shake that injury bug with his knees. Same deal with Lattimore. He can't seem to shake the injury bug with his hamstring. Hopefully he will get over that. But Denzel Ward is a guy that I've been high on all along. It's good to see him crack the two deep. And he's at least going to play as a freshman. We'll see how much. But Denzel Ward's going to be out there as a true freshman. Good to see him on the two deep. At safety, of course, Von Bell and Tyvis Power are the starters. Chris Ash thinks that could be one of the best safety tandems in the nation. Backing them up are Eric Smith and Cam Burrows. That means Malik Hooker is not on the two deep, even though people have been talking him up all camp. But I still think Malik Hooker is going to play a decent amount this year, even though he's not on the two deep. But right now, Eric Smith and Cam Burrows are listed as the backup safeties. And even though nickelback is not listed here, Damon Webb is the number one nickel, and Cam Burrows is the number two nickel. So there you go. Webb number one nickel, Burrows number two nickel. I'm a little surprised Eric Smith is not involved there, but he's been banged up for parts of camp, and right now he's just focused on being a backup safety. Eric Smith is a guy that's going to tear up special teams too. Speaking of special teams, at kicker, Jack Willoughby, the fifth-year senior, transfer from Duke, walk-on, is bracketed together with Sean Nuernberger to be the number one place kicker. Now, we knew Willoughby was probably going to be the kickoff specialist, and he is, but I did not expect him to give Nuernberger this much of a run for his money for the place kicking duties. Mike Nugent was very erratic as a true freshman back in 2001, and then had the best season by an Ohio State kicker ever in 2002 as a sophomore. I didn't think Nuernberger would maybe have the best season ever by an Ohio State kicker as a sophomore, but I thought he would make a big jump from his true freshman year to his sophomore year because he was erratic last year, but I thought Nuernberger would have a pretty big year this year, but he's being pushed by Jack Willoughby. The good news is that Urban Meyer doesn't really like kicking field goals anyway, but good battle there at kicker. There's no battle at punter. No one's even listed as the backup. It's just Cam Johnston. He's the only one on the chart here. Cam Johnston will also serve as the holder. Long snapper Bryce Haynes will be backed up by Aaron Maywerder. And here's where things get interesting. Punt returner. Braxton Miller is your starting punt returner with Curtis Samuel being the backup. That's interesting. Braxton Miller could be an electric punt returner, and that is an understatement. But he will be returning punts for the first time in a real game in his life at Lane Stadium at night, hostile environment, Monday Night Football. I mean, that's an interesting environment to be catching punts for the first time in a real game, but I can't wait to see Braxton Miller in that role. And, of course, when Jalen Marshall gets back, he will be involved there as well. But I really like the idea of Braxton Miller being the punt returner, and, again, Curtis Samuel being the backup there, at least until Jalen Marshall returns. And then at kickoff returner, Curtis Samuel is the main man. I think he could have a huge year this year as the kickoff returner. Again, he's going to play at the H-back position. He's going to play running back. So he's going to play all over offense. But as a kickoff returner, I think this guy could be a game breaker. We didn't see it out of him last year. He averaged just over 20 yards a return, didn't break one. But I think this year we're going to see Curtis Samuel break a couple. I really like that he's the number one kickoff returner. And back there with him is Warren Ball. And I know a lot of people are like, whoa, Warren Ball's back there? I think Warren Ball is basically the lead blocker for Curtis Samuel. And if there's like a pooch kick, Warren Ball can take it. And he's a tough guy, can run north-south and get as many yards as he can. I don't think they're going to have two guys back there with the intentions that Warren Ball is going to have as many returns as Curtis Samuel. They're going to try and funnel it where Curtis Samuel gets the majority of returns, but Warren Ball will be back there with him, again, basically as a lead blocker or a guy that can return pooch kicks. So that's it. I will come up for air now as I went through that whole depth chart, and give me your thoughts in the comments section. I'm curious to see what you guys think about this chart and who you think should be on it, what you think about it, who got left off, who should be moved around, anything you want to say about the depth chart, let me know in the comments section. As far as team coverage, it is a big day on the site. We will interview Urban Meyer tonight after practice at 6:20 p.m. So look for a video and a story on what Coach Meyer has to say. We will also interview Taylor Decker, Jacoby Boren, Adolphus Washington, Ezekiel Elliott, and Eli Apple after practice around 6:30. So look for Bolts, stories, videos, and what all of those guys have to say. If you're looking for recruiting coverage, the Dean of Ohio State football recruiting, Bill Kurlick, has already posted his In the Dean's Office feature on the site for subscribers. It's where you can ask him any question about recruiting or grilling or anything you want to ask Bill at all. He's mostly an expert on recruiting. I'd keep it focused to that. He's not that good of a griller, but recruiting, he knows that stuff pretty well. He's not too shabby at that. Well, that's all from here on the observation deck. Thank you very much for tuning into the show. I appreciate it and hope you have a great day. Take it away, best damn band in the land.